Hey, welcome to The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush. We're going to cover Defense Against Position 2023 figures. Realize that probably about 3 weeks into the season, I will have to revamp all this. But what we have is what we have from last year. And I use this a lot of times in setting lineups, predicting game scripts, these kind of things. And, I get deep into that for our podcast and things. You'll find this on the site. But every year, of course, drafting season, we're in the middle of it. You've got to have some idea of the journey predicted for your team, player, position, etc. At least get an idea. This is not been vetted or tested by me. So I'm kind of like everybody else, just using this as a guide. And I urge you to do the same. It might be a good tiebreaker. And you might even use the extremes, right? The extreme tough situation or the extreme easy situation. So that's, it is what it is. We have what we have to deal with, but I did want to go ahead and get it out so that you can at least see the material that I'm using. That's the whole point here. It's my process. But one thing, and I'm going to start circling back around in future years to do testing, just how predictable is the defense against position. I nicknamed that DAPS. I've done some work a couple years ago, and what I found was early in the season is a guide, in quotes, for the entire season, but there's still a lot of changes going on. With that said, and it's been a while since I've looked at that testing data, but I believe that the extremes were definitely very telling even early in the season. It's not like these were kind of abnormal situations. If especially looking for the surprises, right? Surprises. So with that said, let me start my figures here. First thing, I use my favorite box and whisker, and my metrics that I calculate DAPS, and looking at the populations, and I rate what I call off DAPS, offensive DAPS, just kind of an overall ranking of every team. DAPS for running backs, quarterbacks, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, and defense against the defense, right? So you're probably talking more offense. And if you look at the populations from 2022, they're not the same. In fact, kickers, which I thought was interesting, was very much low. The 50% of the defense was about 58 to 19, right in there. And so kickers may be the hardest to defend against, right? Because, you got one play there. So for the extra points or the field goals. So that's kind of screwy a little bit. I'm sorry, that was defense there. Kickers, on the other hand, are pretty high. So again, high, it's hard to, like I said, hard to defend against the kickers. The running backs, quarterbacks, wide receiver, and tight end here. So the distribution of the numbers, the teams, the defenses is not the same. So there's no uniformity. So if a team is perceived as uniformly a good defense, it doesn't mean that that team is, 100% shut down for all the defenses, right? So that can be kind of a loophole for lineup setting, certainly daily fantasy sports, these kind of things. So it's a little bit more of a seasonal tool. But anyway, right now in preseason, I use it as a tiebreaker. And I scaled all the data. This is PPR points, so we're looking at the defense that pretty much gave up points overall to their opponent's offense, their opponent's running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight end, kickers, and defense. So colorized. And green are easy, red are tough. And I tried to show you the extremes. So right away, the perceived easy defenses to deal with and to our advantage in lineups and other things. Arizona is not so good. Atlanta, Carolina, Detroit, Kansas City, the Raiders, Miami, Minnesota, Tennessee. So, if you have players from those teams, for the most part, overall, those defenses have a harder time against their opponent's offenses, so that you can maybe expect more points. The opposite are the shutdown defenses: Buffalo, Cincinnati, Denver, Green Bay, New Orleans, the Jets, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Washington. So those defenses are pretty tough. So you can look across at things to see if there are spots that defenses have some weaknesses, and I'll give you an example. Here's Buffalo. Overall, the toughest defense based on last year, again based. 25 means they're still pretty tough. Probably what the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about the 7th toughest against running backs. So they're pretty tough. They are almost shut down against a league best. Well, not quite. Houston was league best against quarterbacks, but Buffalo was second. They were fairly easy against wide receivers. So they would shut down probably rushing quarterbacks and these kind of things, but looks like they would allow activity to the wide receivers, but shut down the tight ends big time shutdown. Here's something like Carolina, which is fairly easy. They just flip over for their opponent's wide receivers. Here, look, 100. But they're also very tough against tight ends. So you can start kind of going through each of these columns and get more of a perspective of the defense. And again, probably more seasonal than anything. I really use this with Vegas odds lines and these kind of things to get a deeper focus on game scripts and matchup kind of data. But anyway, you can at least use these metrics to give you an idea of the journey. And so using these metrics, then, the next step is we end up summing these across the season and getting some numerical numbers and pretty much taking the top 25% as the easiest, the next 25 above average, the next 25 below is below average, and the toughest, low 25 is the toughest. And so this chart here shows the easiest and the toughest and the ones in the middle. And now instead of metrics, which can get a little, I don't know, is 13 versus 23, for instance. You see, that says they're tough, but, you know, what is it? It's hard to kind of judge that. But to me, by using kind of labeling and being broad, you kind of have a better taste of the defense. And now you can look across at each team and ask the question, how tough is that defense against, Minnesota? If you're a quarterback playing Minnesota twice a year, you've got 2 easy games, according to this data, right? And your wide receivers, okay? So Minnesota's conference opponents will have an advantage in passing and quarterbacks, that kind of thing. So now you see you can build in this schedule concept and start getting a feel for how easier or tough the teams will be. And you can look at all this. I'll have the static figures on the sites of fantasyfootball.com in my article, and so you can check that out. Here is where I start going team by team. So this is just kind of overall, but now we get to the next level. So week by week, right? And remember, weeks 15, 16, 17 are probably the playoffs. And I give you Arizona, for instance, the team is at home or away, so you can kind of tell that. Who the opponent is, how tough that opponent is, okay? How tough the opponent's defenses are, and for the running backs, quarterbacks, and whatnot. So you can start telling a tale of Arizona, at least predicted, right? So you can look right away at playoffs. Weeks 15 and 17 are going to be overall tough, okay? Tough for the quarterbacks, tough for the tight ends. So if your choice is Murray versus a similar ranked quarterback, and that quarterback has 2 or 3 easy playoff games, whereas Murray has a little bit tougher, that may be a tiebreaker for you, that kind of thing. So this is getting in depth, and you're saying, I thought you said this is fluid data, and it's, yeah, it's a little bit squishy. It is not sticky, and so use this with careful consideration. This is not where you go all in, okay? If you're gambling, going to Vegas and betting playoff scenarios or something, use this, But the good news is I will update this, so I will use these metrics and updates. So obviously as we go on in the season, we'll get better and better. So you can look right away. And so what I do overall is I look at kind of a flow across the season. And this is kind of neat. I think you'll like these graphs here for every team. So I show in this quadrant here all the super easy games predicted. This next quadrant above average easy. This next quadrant below average. And this next is the toughest. So right away, you see the first 5 games of Arizona are tough, tough, and tough, and below average tough. So you only get one break week 2. So Arizona coming out is going to have a lot of pressure on Murray and a lot of tough defenses. He'll have a little break up in here, week 7, 8, and 10. It get tough again, and then here's the playoffs. So you can kind of build these scenarios, and you're saying, well, what does this do? Well, one way that I use this, if I'm doing any kind of trading, for instance, people are going to be, let's just say this is 100% accurate. It's not even close. And I couldn't even tell you, I hadn't done enough data to even tell you how accurate this is. So, but let's just say it's fairly accurate. That means week 5, Murray's had 4 tough games. If, maybe he broke out week 2, like had an opportunity and really delivered. That might mean that for the next 4 weeks or so, he might be a good streaming option week 7, 8, and 10. Maybe in daily fantasy sports, that kind of thing. In other words, he should get peak value week 10. So you could trade for him, and then after week 10, maybe get rid of him again. I don't know if people are trading like that, some of that. But you see right now that you can make predictions of these runs, these extreme situations for the various positions. So when let's look at James Conner. 5 tough games, 6 tough games. People, if Conner is below average and has had tough, people may be off on. You might be able to pick him up because look, 7, 9, 10, 11, he comes back and does pretty good. So you might get 4 weeks, and here's pretty good. So you could get him cheaper than he probably should go, and he might deliver here. On the other hand, the wide receivers might have shown out first 4, but start getting tough coming in here. So maybe to get rid of maybe Rondale Moore, somebody week 4. Okay. Tight ends. I love Zach Ertz. I realize he's, like I said, he's free. Pretty much tight end 3, I took him in best ball. Not sure on, see my tight end 2. Probably not, but if somebody has him, they're going to really be amazed if he can do anything first 6 weeks. Okay, so just be aware of that. So you can kind of predict how things are going to go. If you stream defenses, Arizona, it's interesting, versus Washington. Washington's tough, but they tend to let the opponent's defense score better. So Washington may be a good streaming option week 1, for instance. Here's Atlanta. What it's going to do. Again, this may be more looking at the actual static images, because there's a lot to go over. And again, so this is not accurate data, and this is Ouija board level here at this point, right? Atlanta may have a good defense to draft in a stream, but you definitely want to keep them week 2. Week 1, they would be good to keep, and then get rid of them. But week 5, you might want to collect them again because they have a nice run, especially in the playoffs. Look at that, week 15, 16, 17. So they may be a good defense to stream. You see, that kind of thing. Okay. And you can look at the overall here of what may be happening here. So Atlanta's going to have a nice mid-season here. Look at this. 7, 8, 9, and 10. They're going to shine really good. So they may collect some. And, you know, really 14, 15, 16, 17, that's not bad. Staying above average easy and having easy landscape here. It's just, can you trust your Ritter here? So you wonder maybe Bijan Robinson, maybe this is telling us, you know, his rushing is going to be highly favored. Let's see what's going on here. Well, he's going to have kind of in and out tough. He's actually gonna have a few good weeks. Weeks 2, 4, and 5, 9 and 10, 16 and 17. So if you drafted him, he might deliver in the playoffs. But I could see him having a tough go. Look at this stretch, 6, 7, and 8. If that man can deliver in this week, you know, maybe he is worth trading for. I don't know. He seems expensive right now. Okay, 21 minutes in. Think you got an idea of how to do this. I'll come back and cherry pick some of the other teams. I've got a few little tidbits to focus on at the end of this, but I'm not going to go through team by team. You can do that, you know, in the static. I may take a few, but I don't know. Depends on how I feel about talking. Okay, come back. Have part 2. We're having fun. Woo woo.